I don't know how many of you guys had a chance to see our stuff, or if not, I'd certainly love to see you guys later and show you the presentation on Surre.al. Today, here, what I want to talk about a bit more were both some of the exciting things and some of the challenges having to do with virtual reality and where we're going in the space. I think for many of us, the early version of the Metaverse was defined by a book called Snow Crash. Hopefully many of you who are here have heard about it. VR enthusiasts probably did. And then later on, in '99, this amazing kind of moment in the Matrix, the I know Kung Fu moment, which is so seminal, where all of us realized just what virtual reality could be. It was very exciting. It's the type of vision that drove the development of products like Second Life, which you may have heard about, and for that matter of products like the Oculus itself. And it's something that many of us have devoted literally lifetimes towards both playing and developing. And then kind of more recently, we had what we'd call a Big Bang, this reawakening that's been caused by Facebook's purchase of the Oculus Rift, because it was for many of us a shocker, and if you followed the news, a lot of people were truly taken aback. Some had a very negative feedback associated with it, because here you go, we have this pristine notion of worlds where we are kind of demigods. We can do what we want, we go where we want, we can rescue the princes and whatnot, and all of a sudden, it's tied into a commercial enterprise that makes money on status updates and, barely a step above making money on cat videos. So how do you really go from that into something that's as exciting and generates all the excitement that brings all the people here? Where I think one of the key things that happened with Facebook's purchase of Oculus is it brought tremendous validation to the entire space. To put most bluntly, a lot of people realized you can make money creating this kind of content, and you needed to take certain steps beyond just one more space you could explore with a flyover camera. You needed genuine avatars. You needed lots of things that Facebook brings to the table, and then of course there's a whole other checklist of items that really needs to be done to go beyond what you've seen here today and into the type of stuff that's imagined, if you will, in the movies. And that's primarily what I want to talk to you about today. So what is that checklist? Well, we'll go through some of these bullets in more detail, but here's the idea. You see the top line is checked. That's basically some of what you've seen here today, whether it's our demos, whether it's some of the other demos, really cool stuff, really immersive experience. But if you're even a bit savvy, you notice that many of you, as you're working with the Oculus, were lifting your hand, or you were realizing exactly what do you do besides just kind of look around and spin 360. So there's tons and tons of stuff that has to be done to bring this vision to real reality, if you will. Sorry for the double pun. And that's what's remaining to be done, and that's what we are working on at Surre.al, just about 11 blocks from here. So the first is controllers and interfaces. And you saw some stuff about that. There's a lot of very interesting stuff getting developed. It's probably not a month that goes by that there's not a very cool new idea on Kickstarter, whether it's a band for your hand, whether it's the omnidirectional treadmill that's trying to really get you into the holodeck. So there's lots of cool ideas. The problem with a lot of this stuff is it's still all very, very early. And if you're trying to imagine a mass market, it's tough enough to imagine that every one of your, let's say, games customer or your product customer is going to buy these glasses. It's much harder to then imagine that they'll buy this kind of treadmill or the wristbands or whatnot. And so the answer becomes, you really need, if you have a vision of the metaverse, you really need to bring it to where the players are today. And that's the devices they have today, and not necessarily the immersive technology that's so exciting and cool and that you saw outside. Once you're able to create and aggregate that audience, the early adopters, people like you yourself that have gone and shelled out the money for the glasses, they'll come because they want to come into a living and breathing space. And that's what we believe. The other thing that needs to be done in building the content is catering to more than just the usual suspects. Again, more than just the people that are showing up at meetups like this. This chart that you see at the bottom there is talking about a typical MAU, which is monthly active user number, for one of the larger OpenSim grids. So that's a fairly robust virtual reality community that has existed for multiple years, that has content creation mechanisms built into it. You're talking about 20,000 people a month. If you think about that in terms of, Farmville or Candy Crush, you realize that we're talking about universes of people versus very small number of people. So how do you bridge this gap? And you do have this healthy, very vibrant 3D community that's out there that wants to create, that wants to develop, that wants to make content available, but they don't realize that the viewership for that content is very narrow. You have to find ways to appeal to a much wider audience. That influences both content types that what you're working on and how you're delivering it. So, our view of it is, there's almost nothing better that could have happened to the space than this introduction of Facebook into it. And the bottom line is, if the player will not come to the metaverse, you can bring the metaverse to the player. And you really need to find some way to blend these two worlds. And if you're really talking about serious virtual reality, well, what does it mean? It means that we naturally exist in that state and kind of accept that as almost an ongoing existence between the one world and the other. That means you're going to play and you're going to share these experiences with friends. That means you're going to use the same tried and true methods of spreading the word about your own product as Facebook invitations. There's no particular reason why those cannot work and why virtual reality experiences cannot be social. So in the end, Facebook is crucial. So, and then one of the final pieces to the puzzle is, we strongly believe, is avatars that are genuine extensions of self. So if you really look, obviously nothing about either the Oculus or any of the other recent developments is about inventing avatars. Avatars have been around for many years. Many of you have seen our demo, we've talked about Second Life and others. We believe the real advancement, the real next push is in avatars that are actually tied to your identity. And for better or for worse, Facebook is one of the best and most understood methods of identity out there, especially when it comes to consuming entertainment content. We think that in order to create a lasting and large community, you have to get to a point where you're not creating one avatar that perhaps only can be male, as we all hear about in the Assassin's Creed controversy, and another avatar that looks like a South Park creature, to play Farmville, and then yet another one. We want something, sure, we can create scenarios where there's anonymity. We want something in which you invest, especially over a lifetime, certainly over many, many years. And in order to do that, you need to tie it to identity, and you need to make it be really flexible. Perhaps they should be tall and short and fat and skinny and clearly different gendered and clearly having different interests, and be based on the type of interest that you can have. That we think is a very important next step. And once we accomplish these things, and that's certainly one of the things that we're working on for the last couple of years, your adventure awaits. It really is the most exciting time to be in this space where pretty much anything is open, where there's so much activity on hardware, on software, on content, and we certainly would love to talk to any of you guys. I know lots of the people here have interest in developing content, perhaps from the art side or developers. We're looking for people to help us build out this metaverse. And that, I think, is it with this invitation. Thank
you. Any questions?
Sure.
So most of what you're working on, because I missed the very beginning, is all virtual environments, not necessarily anything that's a combination of real environments and virtual?
We actually have worked on augmented reality as well.
Okay.
And we do see a place for it. Our biggest, our thesis is that you have to build the content and make it available where the player is, right, or where the person is. So our content is available on mobile, our content is going to be available on the web and on Facebook, and our content is going to be available for Oculus. So augmented reality plays an interesting role in that, and we have some very kind of unique ideas about that, particularly when it comes to shopping and more merchandising. That wasn't necessarily the focus of this meetup, and so I didn't get into it too much.
Right.
But it's very easy to see scenarios where you interact with a product in the real world, and then it appears within, using a phone as an input device, and then it appears within your virtual house. So things of that nature are very interesting to us, and we've worked on that. And then, again, the whole notion that your avatar is you really changes how you think about the game, right? It's not quite the same thing, right? So we want you to play with your friends, invite them in a very meaningful way, and share those experiences and reminisce about those experiences, just like as you might when you've gone on vacation and remember it 5 years later, right? So that's a very different kind of gaming dynamic.
So you're imagining a world where the avatar is maybe closer to your true
correct
look.
Yes, correct.
So would people go and have themselves scanned in the 3D?
Well, and believe me, we've been for the last year or so, we've been following every press release and looking, and have developed some test technologies ourselves in terms of taking certain kinds of photos and being able to adapt them. There's huge challenges there. And that certainly didn't make this checklist that I was talking about. That would be an order above that. But yes, that we do think that that's an important piece of the puzzle. Sure.
Using Kinect sensors for.
Well, people have talked about Kinect. People talked about other stuff you can do for the face. Just probably really more so requires taking certain kinds of pictures in certain settings. And there are people doing a lot of interesting work on reading your face using the camera and repeating your face gestures and speech patterns and all that kind of stuff. Look, when I talked about the devices earlier, what if you just simply want to text with someone, just to chat? You can't because you don't see the keyboard, right? So there are a lot of challenges. So yeah, sure, you can integrate voice, and your high-end gamer is going to have voice chat for Call of Duty, so you'll have it here as well. But that's what keeps it from being ubiquitous, right? These are all the things that silo it and put it for just a few. I'm interested in developing games and content that 1 billion people will play. And that's, so to do that, you have to go wider by necessity. And you certainly, maybe will not go as deep as well, but one of the things, you have to make it accessible. And so to me, it's not an issue of not making it available on the Oculus Rift devices like that. That's very exciting and very interesting, but it has to be much more widely available. And there's really no reason not to do it at this point, I think. But it requires thinking about it. Yeah.
Just to go off the tangent about, reaching 1 million people, we've talked about gaming, talked about social. Have you guys thought about sort of the business angle of things, where maybe the way to get the hardware into the market to a lot of people is where, people want to use this sort of as a way to, not go to work, work from home, but still be in the same place with all these?
Well, there's a lot, that's certainly not our primary focus. Sure, I mean, telecommuting and other things. I mean, I think virtual reality has a lot of applications in those areas. Sure, we all think about business, probably think about business more than you'd want to. You'd rather think about fun. But we have a certain idea about monetization. It's not any big surprise. It's what people have been doing in the gaming space over the last decade. It's virtual goods. It's product placement, which works very nicely within virtual worlds. The notion of giving out devices for free, I think, when Facebook bought Oculus, there was some thought of that they may do that. I think they clearly have the option of being the low-cost provider, and there may be some things like that. There may be brand advantage, just like they're doing it in the, let's say, the cell phone space. People create they subsidize the device. So I'm sure that will happen, but I don't have any particularly strong comment on that. I don't know what, I think right now, the one thing I can tell you is there's just huge experimentation going on in hardware. It's very exciting, but it's also very early. And people, it's the classic example of people sinking in a lot of money, and it's not clear which of these things will work. But there are, kicked in our part into a bunch of Kickstarter projects. Can't wait to get like the omnidirectional treadmill to try it. It seems like you could really easily get killed running on the damn thing, but it probably will be fun. So we're definitely looking at that. And their pricing, I think, in the $400 range. So is it cheap? By no means. But to the avid gamer, it's something that they can look at. Yeah. Sure.
Your environment seems to be created around the human condition, like you put them all, you put the user in point of view of a human being. And I remember reading about Linear from the earlier virtual reality developers saying about the avatar and how important it was for education. If you wanted to learn how a crab will behave in an environment, you may want to be a crab in virtual reality. Have you, in your company, have you considered also extending the avatars to other forms besides the human form?
Yes. In fact, so if you had a chance to look at our demo, there's some rudimentary examples there of the little compy dinosaurs following you around, and we're very interested in advancing AI in general as well as those kind of things. But look, there's a chart that actually didn't make it into the presentation that talked about what EA is doing with The Sims recently and how far they've advanced the model with AIs and avatars. These are, I realize, the human form, but there is so much to do on that front. Again, it didn't even make this checklist just before. I think we're still really in the low-hanging fruit phase of gathering and bringing people onto these platforms. But I agree, there's some very interesting things to explore there.
Arthur, thank you very much. Surre.al has an entire room over there dedicated to the product, so please.
Yeah, please stop by and check it out. Thank you very much.